Dallas Theological Seminary's Chapel Podcast.
Dr. Mike Lawson is our department chair and senior professor in our Christian education department. If you are around him at all, you know that he has a passion for churches, especially in the developing world, and their Christian education programs. He's devoted 21 years of ministry to Dallas Seminary and over 3 decades in pastoral work and Christian education. His teaching schedule takes him all over the planet. In addition, he has helped develop the National Congress on Christian Education for Mexico City. He works alongside of his wife Tish, who a wife of over 40 years. She serves as his assistant in the Christian education department. There are those teachers who are consumed with their studies. Some are consumed with their subject. If you're around Mike at all, you know he's consumed with his students. And he is a student's prof. Would you join me in welcoming Dr. Mike Lawson to our platform this morning?
When Chaplain Brian invited me to speak in the chapel, I wondered to myself, could I bring anything really different to this pulpit? Something unique, something that maybe has never been done before, something even historic for this moment. I'm sorry that Dr. Hanna is not here because he could validate for us whether or not this truly is going to be one of those historic moments. As I thought about it, the word ruminating came to my mind. And I wondered if anyone had ever really done any serious ruminating from this pulpit. I didn't think so, and so it occurred to me that might be the thing that I would bring to this moment, some ruminating. Now, it is important, before I go any further, to give the proper disclaimer. Ruminating is not for amateurs. Do not try this at home without supervision. It can be dangerous to your health. Well, for example, here we have a living example in front of us, Dr. Bingham. He started ruminating in his adolescent years, and look what happened to him. And that's clear for everybody to see that you need to be very, very careful. Dr. Constable actually started ruminating at home. However, his wife forbid him to do it in the house. So for Dr. Constable, ruminating is an out-of-house experience exclusively. When Dr. Honer tried to ruminate, he spotted a comma out of place in the footnote. And he just couldn't bring himself to ruminate anymore. What I like about ruminating is that it allows you to wonder without drawing any serious conclusions. And that was good for me because I already had too many conclusions, and I've not been able to keep them sorted out. So ruminating seemed like a good approach for this morning. What would you ruminate about? Well, I thought I might ruminate about ancient words. Words written to a different man in a different place. Simple words, really, found in Daniel chapter 5. You will know them. You don't even have to look at them. They're very brief. It says, mene, teqel, pharsin. Numbered, weighed, and divided. Ancient words written to a different man in a different place. But I wonder, is it possible to be weighed and found wanting? Well, the year was 1991, and we were doing great things for God in those days. You would have been so impressed. That was the year that we actually pulled off the Congress for Christian Education in Mexico City, the first one done in the history of that country. It was 5 years in the planning, raising the funds, recruiting teachers, coordinating it with the major denominations in Mexico City. A number of trips were required for that. We ran a week of ministry, training youth, children, adult workers in the churches. It was a great week. As you can well imagine, if you've ever served in those kind of capacities, towards the end of the week, you start running out of gas. You can get very, very weary, not from bad things, but from good things. And toward the end of that week, I was starting to run out of gas. I had given it everything. This had been a dream for so many years, and to be able to participate in it and see it happen was so exciting. We were doing great things for God. At the end of the week, a young pastor came up to me. He was much younger than most of you in here. They start out early in those places. And he came and asked if I would come and preach in his church. I already had a commitment for that Sunday morning, and so I declined his offer. And he said, would you be so kind as to come then on Sunday night? Well, mentally, emotionally, physically, I had planned for Sunday morning to kind of be the swan song of all of that ministry. And to think of adding one more message on a Sunday night was almost more than I could bear. But I thought, well, it's the thing to do. This young man has asked, I haven't got a commitment, I'll go. Mike, the murder. Anything for you, Lord. And so it was on that Sunday night that I got up in front of maybe 12 to 13 people in this tiny little Mexican church, downtown impoverished Mexico City. But I didn't hold back. I gave them the best I had. That's not good on a good day, but it was the best I had. And I was preaching. Now, what many of you don't know because you don't have experience yet is that you can preach and think at the same time. Now, that's not evident always because when you hear us, you wonder, what are they thinking? But we often are thinking about things not really related to the material in front of us. We are actually thinking other things. And on that evening, while I was preaching, my thought processes were interrupted because this old woman wandered in from the street and started walking, actually staggering kind of down the middle aisle. And I'm halfway through my message. And here she comes. I mean, it's just an obvious disruption, and I didn't know how the pastor was going to handle it or what we were going to do about it. I mean, she was dressed in clothing that you wouldn't buy at Goodwill. They turn those things into rags. If she had a tooth in her head, I didn't see it. And it really upset me. I'm thinking, here I am, Lord. It's Sunday night. I'm worn out. I've given you everything, and now I'm giving you what I've got left. And here's this woman coming in, and she's interrupting this message. What in the world is happening? And she staggered in. She kind of got in her little row over here and plopped down and began to kind of bob up and down. And I thought, she's probably a drug addict or an alcoholic and just found a warm place in out of the cold evening. When I finished my message, it was fabulous as usual. And we went back for what Dr. Hendricks has affectionately called the glorification of the worm ceremony, where you shake hands with all of those dear folk who came to hear you preach. So I did. I was shaking hands, and this old woman was the last one in line, and I'm thinking, I hope this young pastor knows how to handle a panhandler. I hope he's got enough experience to deal with her so that I don't have to get tangled up with all of the problems that she's got in her life because I just don't have anything left to give. I'm done, Lord. It's over for me. Put me in a Ziploc bag and ship me home. Well, we waited, shook hands with everybody, and here she came, and he wasn't doing anything to kind of ward her off, and I didn't pick up any vibes from him that he was really on his toes, and I thought he just doesn't have the experience necessary to cope with this situation, and it's going to get grim. And as soon as she arrived in her turn in line, he turned to her and looked at her face, and he opened his arms and he hugged her, and then he turned to me and he said, "I want you to meet our church's missionary." Well, if you'd have hit me with a cattle prod, it wouldn't hurt anymore. Church's missionary. Yes, sir, and she's been a widow since she was 21 and has served the church faithfully since then. She apologized that she would have been on time, but there was a young couple moved into the apartment house complex, and she wanted to make sure that they heard the good news of Jesus Christ and were invited to the church. But as soon as she arrived, she began to pray for your message. And I wondered, if I was weighed in the scale and she were on the other side, would I be found wanting? Ruminating. It can be dangerous to your health. Ancient words written to a different man at a different time. Mene, teqel, you pharsin. That same decade, I found myself in the Ukraine outback. Now, if you've ever been to the Ukraine, you wonder, is there really an outback? Yeah, I've been there. I've been to the Ukraine outback, and I was staying in a communist-era luxury hotel. It did have a toilet, and mine fortunately had a seat. Of course, the seat wasn't actually attached to anything. Fortunately, I was born and raised in Texas, and I managed to mount that thing and stay on it. There are advantages to being a native Texan. The room had one TV and two TV stations. They were both playing the exact same program at the exact same time. Wednesday night came, and the options were presented to me. Would you like to go back to your room and rest, or would you like to come over to the church and attend a Gideon meeting? Oh, could I please go back to that room? That really wasn't what I thought. I thought anything to save me from the room. Gideons, welcome. So I climbed in the van and we went to the church. And we went to the back of the church where the Gideons had built a room on the back of the church on the second story. And you could access the room by a flight of iron steps that you would go up. And so we were standing there on this gravel driveway. It was not really nice gravel. It was that hard, gnarly kind of gravel. I'm standing there kind of waiting for the person with the key to come and open up the door so that we could participate in the Gideon meeting. I was really looking forward to it because our church in Oklahoma City had one of the largest Gideon groups in the state of Oklahoma, and I have great respect for the people in that ministry. And so we were waiting, standing there. Unfortunately, my translator was not with me, so I could not really communicate with the other Gideons that were standing around and waiting. And as I watched, I looked down the driveway, and I saw this man coming up the driveway. It was one of the most pitiful sights that I think I've ever seen in my life. It was a man, and he was pulling himself along on his knuckles and his knees. And his legs apparently had been disabled in an accident or a war, and so he would pull himself along on his knuckles and his knees, and I thought of how awful that must feel on that gravel, and he had rags wrapped around his hands And I thought to myself, thank you, God, for the Gideons. This man has come, and these are men of compassion, and somebody will reach out and help this man. And he knows that if you come to a church and if you meet people like Gideons, you're going to get some help. Somebody will take care of you. Somebody will minister to you. This poor man who pulled himself along. And I was grieving as I watched him, not being able to offer some word of encouragement to this poor soul. And he pulled himself, and I kept waiting for someone to step forward, and he kept pulling himself, and finally he got right in front of me, and he took a hard right-hand turn, and he began to pull himself up those iron steps, because you see, he was the man with the key. He was a Gideon. And I watched that evening as he put money in the offering to make sure that the poor people in Ukraine would have a Bible. Mene, teqel, pharsin. How would it be if he were on the other side of the scale? Would I be weighed and found wanting? Ruminating can be dangerous to your health. Ancient words written to a different man at a different time. But I wonder. Now, some of you may be wondering why in the world I would bring a message about ruminating at a time like this in the semester. Well, in just a few weeks, we're all going to get dressed up, you know. Going to put on our medieval robes. Happy time of year for many. We're going to congratulate ourselves on another year successfully completed. Some of you, we as faculty will weigh in the balances, and you will be found wanting. And then, of course, you will return the favor on our course evaluations. I love this time of year. Many awards and many fine speeches will be given. You can count on it. Lots of applause, family present to celebrate our accomplishments. But deep down inside, I wonder, are we really as good as we think we are? Or maybe we're just legends in our own mind. Mene, teqel, pharsin. Weighed in the balances, found wanting. Just makes me wonder. Ancient words written to a different man, different time. Ruminating. Have a good day.